Okay, I'll give you guys a startup video. Let's see what this thing sounds like here. Got your ignition, got to go here, and then there she goes. Has an exhaust leak. The studs on the back of both sides are broken off. You'll hear it's just starting to come down now. It's idling around 650, 700. Sounds pretty good. Give it a little rip here. That's her. Sounds pretty good. Okay, so a couple things I just figured out. One, pretty bad vacuum leak. That was this hose right here. And it's, I don't know if you could see that. It's like a, I don't know. Doesn't look like it's PTFE, but it looks like it's a typical AN hose used for maybe fuel line or something like that. Was used for the brakes. So I replaced it with this silicone braided vacuum line. Put a clamp on both sides, one there, one on the back of the intake manifold. Also, the barb fitting on the back of the intake manifold was also loose, so I took that fitting out, put some sealant on it, and tightened it back up, put a clamp on there, got that vacuum line on. The other issue I'm running into is this cooling system. So have the upper radiator hose, obviously, comes into radiator. There's a cap here, which is 1.3 bar. So that would normally bleed into a vented tank. Well, instead I have this pressurized tank, which also has a 16 psi cap on it. So as soon as I started to get a little bit of warmth into it, this tank got pressurized. This also got pressurized, and it's low, so it's probably trying to push air into the tank, which it couldn't, because this, it's not just a tank that isn't vented, but it also, if you could see here on the lower hose, goes into the bottom of this tank, almost as it's a return for this tank. Which I guess maybe could work, but this would have to be vented to atmosphere to allow the coolant that when it gets hot expands, pushes into this tank, and then when it cools off it would suck back to the return. That would make sense, but it's sealed on both ends, so I'm not sure what to do about that right now. I might just cap this here, let this just be an expansion tank. Even though it's 16 psi, maybe I could put a non-vented, or that's non-vented, but a release cap on there, run this into a overflow bottle for now, just to get this thing so it's venting and working properly. I think long term what I'm going to need to do is remove this tank altogether, cap off the lower coolant hose down there, and then just run this into a vented overflow bottle. I think that's my plan. So for now I have this off, and the coolant's a little low. You can still see the top of the radiator fins in there. I did spew some on the ground when it started actually leaking out of this cap, and then once it leaked out of the cap, it couldn't come back into this one, and this obviously couldn't leak back into there, so the whole thing just got pressurized. Something on here started leaking. I'm pretty sure it was the seal on this cap, and then it just started to get into the frame rail and onto the ground and whatnot. So for now I have this cap off. At least I can start it, get some heat into it, and then as it expands it'll just fill up to here, and then I'll be able to see what's happening. But it runs. Well, you always find a lot of interesting stuff I was able to get most of this stuff cleared out in here. But moving down, I have all the wiring diagrams. I just don't know what a lot of this stuff is, and it doesn't help that I don't know if this was melted. Hold on, let me move this camera. Or what. I mean, these look melted if they focus. It also looks like maybe they tried to twist tape them. There's a lot of electrical tape in here. So I could find the diagrams. Maybe I could figure out what this is, but I don't know if you could see that, if it's going to focus. But yeah, a lot of those are just melted, charred. Not good. I also found all this other stuff underneath the dash. So we have a ball of wiring there, another ball of wiring, fuse with spades, another connector of stuff. Got a relay. That's not too bad. It's a good sign. Don't know what that there is. Let's see what this is. Flasher. Okay. Well, I don't know where that goes. Let's see if I could show you some of the other stuff that's happening under here. So yeah. Yep, there's a lot happening under there. So, a lot of little clips and just a mess. Luckily, I enjoy wiring and solving problems, so I'm going to have a little bit of both. Solving problems and doing some wiring. Now, all the aftermarket stuff should be relatively easy. I should be able to figure out what all of this is and kind of trace them all back. Now, I have the wiring diagrams, like I said, for the Hondas, but the problem is I don't know what this connector would have been. So if I search for something like door wiring, I could find door wiring, or turn signal wiring, or whatever would have been here. It looks like the radio, the volume, the mute, that sort of stuff would have been over here. So maybe that's this harness, or maybe it was that harness. I'm not sure. So that's where I run into an issue, trying to figure out what these plugs would have been to. Once I know what they are, I'll be able to trace back all the wires. So step one is going to be removing all of this stuff. Once it's all gone and I have essentially the factory wires, I'll be able to put them all back in as I deem them necessary. Now there's another wire here. Let's see if I can get it to, yeah, right there. That's probably blurry, but it's just chewed up, so probably won't focus. Either way, I'll probably just strip the whole jacket off right there in that nasty region and depin it from here, put a piece of heat shrink on it, shrink it down, and that will be fixed from there. This connector, I'm guessing, is for the AC and the blower fan and temperature control. All of this works, so if I could just fix that one little piece right there, that should all be good, and everything on that side pretty much good to go. This side here is where the problems go, probably because there is no radio, but, and then, wow. I just had a small little win, so I wanted to record it and show you what I've been working on. I have a bunch of stuff ripped out. Well, let's turn the light on. Bunch of stuff ripped out. Still a lot going on, but you'll see I got a lot of Scotch clips off, disconnected, cleaned up, trying to figure out what's happening. Still scared for that, but we'll get to there. So the previous owner stated that the turn signals didn't work and hazards didn't work. I think they were in the process of wiring this in, this flasher, and it's got a relay and some other stuff. I took off these wires that went to ground and everything else, and I was doing a little bit of digging, so I pulled up wiring diagram on here, and you'll notice fuse box here comes in, depends if you have the turn signals or the hazard switch on, comes down, goes into the hazard switch, which normally would pass key on power to the turn signal relay, and then up, and then if you flip right or left, you pass power down to the lights, which I'd have to scroll down. However, hot at all times, nothing's happening here, so this doesn't get power. When you hit the hazard switch, even with the key off, since this is hot at all times, it will put power to the relay, and then there are provisions for right and left. There's a third one. This doesn't use it, obviously, but when you connect 1 and 2 to 3, which is hot, it will pass power down to the lights. So sure enough, I went through and checked out the multimeter. I'm getting power in here. So here is the hazard switch, which was not connected as expected. So if I go ahead and I jumper 6 to 10 as you saw, and then number 3 to both 1 and 2, which I think I could do that real quick. Let's see if I can set you down. Gosh dang. Okay. So I'll put keep alive power here, 6 to 10. So what that's doing is passing hot at all time power to the relay, and then 3, which is from the relay, let's say to the left, you could hear it. There's a bulb out now, so it's got a hyper flash. And now to the left side here on this pin, and you can already hear it clicking, but we come out here. Sure enough, they do work. The relay works, the factory wiring works, which is great, because what I think was happening is, pop this open. Let's see if you could see in here. I'd have to grab the light, but yeah, there are some clips there and wiring run, and then again the same on this side. There are some clips and then wires run to the front, which I think they were planning on using that flasher and teeing into the wires to get the flashers to work off of another switch, which was going to be maybe over here. However, all the factory stuff does work. I just have to get a factory hazard switch, plug it in, and it should work. Now, the other thing you saw in that diagram was if we disconnect these, which those are our hazards, and we put this to here, which is key on only, and I put that back into there to the relay, and I do key on. Oh, that's the trunk. And then I flip on the ignition, of course. But here I have turn signals. That one's hyper flash, of course, because one of the bulbs is out, but yeah. So if I just go ahead and get a factory hazard switch, or I do have an aftermarket hazard switch, which I could wire it up using the normally open and the normally closed positions to do what I need to do here, I should be able to get normal hazard from the button and normal turn signals from the stock. So that's great. I was pretty happy to find that out. Okay, so I've dug in a little bit deeper and found out that that switch panel pops out, and there's some stuff behind there. You can see I got a lot of the clips sort of pulled down so I could sort of trace them back, figure out what's going on. Still scared of that, but I got this out so far. A lot of clips. The wire's pretty long. It's bundled up, a couple bundles of it. Not really sure where it went, but it's out now, so I'll find out when stuff isn't working. Those things still got to trace, figure out where they go. But when I pulled the radio out, or I guess the radial panel, what would be the radio. I found this gem. I think this is old radio wiring. Maybe that plugged into the back of the head unit. There's a lot of stuff happening back there. See if I can hang this light. I have trouble with lights, don't I? Let's see. Okay. That kind of looks like a radio. That kind of looks like factory radio. And I don't know what happened here. It's pretty crusty. But these, again, I don't know where they go. Oh, look at that. Just twist those together right there. No tape or anything. And these make me think there may have been an aftermarket gauge panel, because these look like the type of plugs that would plug into a gauge pod. Oh, wow. Look at that. I just fixed it. Those go to nowhere. Okay, well, put those in that pile. This one still goes somewhere, and this one is in that snakeskin whatever stuff, and that one I do know comes out over there and runs to the rear, which I think is the fuel pump stuff, but I'm not sure. Anyway, if you look back there, I'm going to try and mark each of those before I pull them off, so I know which went to the fan and which went to the fuel pump and which went to the headlights and which went to the reverse lights. Then I'll be able to trace them back a lot easier. But yeah, good times. Luckily, this turned out to be an easy one. So what I had, this was for an aftermarket head unit that was installed at some time. Obviously not the person I bought it from, because this is super old, and he said there was no radio or anything like that. So yeah, what they did is they stripped these really far, and they just cut the jacket of the factory wires and wrapped it around. So that there, in with all that crap. And now what I'm left with is a bunch of these wires that have a section of jacket missing, which is not too bad. It's a lot better than if they just cut the wires. So this one I'm leaving connected. This one I assume is power because it goes to these, but I want to mark all those before I take them apart. So these wires, I'll either have to pop the terminals out from here and then put a little piece of heat shrink on there and then re-insulate them, or if I could figure out what these terminals are. I don't know much about what Honda uses, so if I could figure out what those terminals are, I'll pop the pin out and then cut the wire back here just after where it's already been stripped, and then crimp a new terminal on and then push it back into this connector. So I'll have to do some looking around and see what those connectors and terminals are, and if I can find the terminals, I'll just crimp new ones on. I'll probably actually cut the whole harness back here and then crimp a new terminal on for each one and then snap it back into this plastic housing. So yeah, that took only a couple minutes, and I was able to get rid of that big bulk of wire out of there. And nice to know that this is still here. There are no speakers in these doors, but if the wiring's all there, I might be able to add them, put this back in, and put a little head unit in there and get rid of that switch panel, have some sound. So yeah, that'll be good.